back against the Australians on this.
All right. Okay, Keith, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We're shifting focus now, and an NFL player in America who recently committed suicide is believed to have suffered from an illness caused by repeated head bashing. It's called CTE, and it leads to aggressive behaviour and loss of inhibitions. Now, it's believed to be common amongst gridiron players, so experts now believe it may also explain why there's been such a spate of bad behaviour among footballers here. Well, forensic expert Catherine Fox and former gridiron player Colin say this is a much bigger problem than we realise in Australia. So good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, I know you're both in agreement that more research needs to be carried out. Catherine, you've focused on this subject in your new book, which is called Death Mask. So how big do you believe this problem is?
Well, we've got so far research from the US and the gridiron players, the American football, has been quite forthcoming in doing the research, but more because they've had so many incidences of CTE. What it is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is chronic trauma to the brain. And the sad thing is you can't diagnose it with any scans. It can only be diagnosed on post-mortem once you have the brain. And I've had a lot of young players committing suicide, drug overdoses, and at post-mortem they're found to have this. There was a guy as young as 21 recently committed suicide.
Goodness. And
what it does is it's a chronic trauma damages the front part of the brain, which is responsible for personality, decision-making, so you get more depression, you get more addictive behaviours like alcohol, drugs, gambling.
Absolutely. And then bad behaviour also, like
sexual inhibition, reckless, high-risk behaviours. The impairment of the judgment to judge, is this appropriate, is this not? And so I can't help but wonder, when I wrote Death Mask, I wanted to know, is this why we're seeing so much bad behaviour? But the research is really quite concerning. We haven't got it here.
Colin, what's your experience been then observing NFL players?
Well, Mel, number one, that running through a brick wall like I did 1,000 times a day is not good for your lifespan. The average age of death, Mel, is 50 years of age, which is absolutely stunning and actually quite terrifying.
So the average age of death
is 50. It's just dropped from 52 to 50, but the good
for
news...
an NFL player?
Yeah, but the good news is we get our pension at 51.
Oh, great.
No, but the reality is that, look, that's a big part of obesity. We certainly live the high life. The pain pills, you name it, Mel, but... You know, it's just interesting now to look at all the, the studies now and coming out. Footballers now have a 20 more times chance of getting dementia, 10 times more chance of getting depression. These are now coming into, we're getting all these studies now that are proving that the head injury, and it's interesting, Mel, we always thought a concussion was a bruising of the brain, but it's actually, it's quite interesting. It's nothing to do with the bruising of the brain. It's suddenly the brain is, when you push your head forward suddenly and stop it, it releases chemicals in the brain that actually kill off receptors that affect our mood and our behaviour. So every time we're hitting, it is actually directly affecting our moods.
So what do we do? There's obviously two categories. You've got professional sports people. You've also got a lot of kids, young people who are playing sport.
Developing brains.
Absolutely. Do they need to wear more headgear? Do we need to look at the rules? Do we need to look at how games are played?
I would like to see, honestly, a preventive measure coming in, Mel. And number one, that's better technique, better coaching. Make sure your child has to be honest, the balls and the attitude, because, if you're frail, you're going to get injured out there. If they don't want to play contact sports, don't make them. Find another sport, though. Very critical that we keep kids active. But I'd like to see kids build their necks up. You can prevent, and that's better education. It's building the neck up, maybe making the neck a bit stronger, learning to put your head to the side. There's these basic coaching techniques that maybe kids aren't getting, so they can at least build the confidence so they have less injuries.
Unfortunately, though, you're getting soccer players too. Hitting a soccer ball as a professional, you're hitting a ball at 60 to 80 kilometres an hour, which is a decent impact. You wouldn't want to do that repeatedly. But a simple tackle, the sort of tackles that our rugby league players do, it's like hitting a car windscreen at 60 k's an hour with no seatbelt, and they do that up to 1,500 times in a season. And you wouldn't employ a live crash dummy to do that and consider that safe and then expect them to be perfectly functioning off hours. So soccer players, AFL players are at risk too, because the game's getting more aggressive, faster.
The game is getting faster. We're seeing Polynesians coming in, God bless them, Mel, but they put their body on the line, and we're seeing more injuries. But we've got to draw a balance here. We don't want to cotton wool our kids, We're putting them in aluminium cylinders, and when we're overprotecting kids. We've still got to let kids take risks and be out there and let kids be kids and adventure and do their thing. But we also need to look at the consequences now of the collisions that are happening in sports. The games are getting so fast and so intense that the head... Did you pick that up, Mel? Feel that for starters.
All right, I'm a wimp. I wouldn't be able to run around on a field with that on my head, let alone anything.
Well,
thank you both for joining us. It's a really interesting conversation to start, and as a mum of a little sportsman, you kind of got to be a little nervous, so thanks for coming in. This weighs a ton.
Yeah, dangerous.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Up soon, is there such a thing as free education? We've